Welcome to the Genestealer Cult Faction Pack, an updated version of the 10th edition faction pack, and this is our compatibility document to make the Genestealer Cult 10th edition codex work in 11th edition. Expect only things that make the rules compatible, not rules that fix problems we have, or any of our bad wording or bad rules. Like the Benefactor's Invuln save ability to give himself and just himself a 4+ invulnerable save for a phase, for that model only, that's going to continue into 11th edition. There isn't going to be a fix. Games Workshop is giving the bare minimum to make the codex work. It only has to function, is probably what their brief was. We're not correcting the codex or balancing the codex for 11th edition. Not at this time. There will be flamers that have torrent and also have the now pointless ignore cover rule to let the flamers ignore the -1 ballistic skill penalty on all those hit dice that you are not rolling because torrent weapons auto hit. There will be plenty of commentary in this video from me, Christian von Carmian, on what is looking good for the Genestealer Cult in 11th edition. I am known as the YouTuber to come to for Genestealer Cult advice, so I probably should do my job instead of sitting back and reading book to you. PDF. It's a PDF where you don't get a full book, you get a PDF compatibility document. There will be a separate future look at all the detachments and their missions and combinations and deep dives into using each detachment as we get further into the edition, and I have points values and a full rulebook instead of the half a core rules released online. I am not referring to the softback book that comes in the Armageddon box. That is the same half of the rules. I mean the rules commentary and the rules appendix that is yet to be released, but is part of the core rules, and all the rules that are app only, like how to build an army rules. Once we have Frankenstein stitched together the pile of body parts that is a rulebook that Games Workshop has dumped in front of us to play with, then I can start making videos that have a backing in reality. This is your cue to subscribe for in-depth Genestealer Cult guidance, with the subscribe button that's below this video. Right, where should we start? Probably with the good news. Final Day is still here and not cut down to a 1 detachment point detachment. The 3 new detachments are 1 detachment point, Host of Ascension is 3 detachment points, all the others are 2 detachment points. The idea is that in a 1000 point game, you have 2 detachment points to spend, and at 2000 points or higher games, you play with 3 detachment points. We don't know about 1500 points, even though it was sort of answered as a question in the terrible Q&A. The answer we were given was Strike Force, which refers to 2000 points, and then the presenter went on to describe Incursion, that you use the lower level until you reach the next one up. So 1600 points would use Incursion until you were playing 2000 points, then it's a Strike Force. Do what you want is my view, but let's stick with the rounded to 1000 numbers. In a 1000 point game, you could use the Heroes of the Uprising and the Purestrain Broodswarm, or you could use the Brothers Auxilia. These are examples. You could not officially use Host of Ascension. Then in a 2000 point game, you could use Host of Ascension alone, or use all 3 of the 1 detachment point detachments, or mix Xenocult masses with Biosanctic Broodsurge. All of those are fine. Each detachment has a force disposition with it. In general, Purge the Foe rewards you for killing enemy units, Reconnaissance rewards positioning, like you are in the enemy deployment zone and they are not in yours, Take and Hold wants you to have lots of objectives and more objectives than your opponent, Disruption wants you to complete actions on objectives and stop the enemy doing their thing, and Priority Asset seems to be the force disposition about doing stuff in one particular place, like the central objective. Under the mission deck rules that have been leaked, you can pick whatever force disposition you want, but under the presumed tournament mode, event pack rules not yet released, primary mission depends on your force disposition, which can only be chosen from the detachments you picked. Most people are expected to play this way. Heroes of the Uprising is Purge the Foe, Purestrain Broodswarm is Priority Assets, Xenocult Masses is Disruption. Biosanctic Broodsurge, Brothers Auxilia, and Host of Ascension are all Take and Hold. Makes sense for Host of Ascension, where you have lots of neophytes. Makes sense for Brothers Auxilia, where you have lots of people with various number of arms. And it's Imperial Guard. Imperial Guard Take and Hold. But Biosanctic Broodsurge, the one that's all about infiltrating with Purestrains, has taken hold? If you say so. Final Day is Purge the Foe, Outlander Claw is Reconnaissance, of course. Thankfully that one seems correct. And Xenocreed Congregation is Priority Assets. You could pick your detachments for your army based on what you want to do. If you have Brood Brothers, but it's all the big guns to kill the enemy, also take Heroes of the Uprising in a 2,000 point game, and then out of the options of Taken Hold or Purge the Foe, choose Purge the Foe as your disposition. Focus on killing the enemy. From the leaked cards for the mission deck, there is not that much difference between the dispositions. They all want you to kill the enemy and hold some objectives. Purge the Foe and Taken Hold are the most extreme focuses, and they don't have actions. Genestealer Cult are generally good at all the things. We can disrupt the enemy with our deep strikes. We can potentially kill enemy units if you have the right combos. We have the bodies and the high objective control, especially on our basic neophytes, to take and hold objectives. But the choices available are narrowing the Genestealer Cult into 3 lots of take and hold, 2 lots of Purge the Foe, 2 lots of priority assets, and only 1 reconnaissance and 1 disruption. I thought we would be much more of a disruption army, or reconnaissance army, rather than sending out waves of cultists to control and hold the battlefield. We would want to get in there, do a thing, and get out before we get wiped out, as a resistance, as an insurgency, asymmetric stuff, not straight up fighting. If you want to play a disruption mission, you have to include the Xenocult Masters Detachment in your army. Or, you know, pick whatever disposition you want. I don't fancy Purge the Foe with Final Day, but adding in Purestrain Broodswarm, I think I could do priority assets with Final Day and Purestrain Broodswarm. Okay, the army rule. We'll do changes to the army rule, and then the units, and then an overview of the detachments, including the new ones, now that they've been released in full, and not partially released as we saw before. The Cult Ambush army rule is fundamentally the same as the last balance patch. You spend points to put the dead units into a special kind of strategic reserves, then they come back by Deep Strike or by Cult Ambush. You can't use Rapid Ingress on them. There's a new clarification that units in Cult Ambush are not destroyed at the end of Battle Round 3. I'm hoping that the rules appendix yet to come out would also say, yeah, it's only units that start the game in reserves that are destroyed at the end of Battle Round 3. But having this here for additional clarity is good. Many rules that relate to things being 9 inches away are changed to be 8 inches away. Enemies must be within 8 inches to remove our tokens instead of within 9 inches. But we still place an ambush marker anywhere on the table more than 9 inches from the enemy. That remains 9 inches for some reason, the reason probably being that the document wasn't properly checked over. It's gonna be a running theme for today, and every day that Games Workshop continues in its current state. There is clarity that you can use this to set up a unit in turn 1, which you otherwise had to infer from the rules commentary. So if your unit got killed in the enemy turn 1, you could arrive from Deep Strike in your turn 1. That is fine. The biggest problem comes with the triggering of Cult Ambush. I assume that bad Games Workshop writing is at play again, and they thought a copy and paste would work easily. It doesn't work, and ruins Cult Ambush for us. In 10th edition, when an attached unit was destroyed, it split into its constituent parts. Dead bodyguard, dead leader. And then we used the Cult Ambush on the 10 metamorphs to bring them back, while the Primus, who did not have the Cult Ambush rule, died. The wording is the same for Cult Ambush in 11th edition. If every model in the unit has this ability, this Cult Ambush ability, then it can use Cult Ambush. In 11th edition, attached units are 1 unit for all rules purposes, 1 unit of 11 models. Only 10 of those 11 models have Cult Ambush. Maybe there's something from the attached unit abilities table that can make it work, but I can't see it. I'm working under the assumption that Games Workshop wanted us to do the same as 10th edition, and Games Workshop messed up the rule. The unit dies, with or without the character, and you bring the bodyguard back is how I think it should work. Otherwise, you cannot use the Cult Ambush army rule on units that started the game attached to a character. Not a problem, really. It's not like the Genestealer Cult use many characters. So I'm hoping for an errata to this errata document, because attached units can't use the army rule is absurd. Oh, your mob has a war boss? Well, it can't war. Imperial Guard orders cannot apply to units with an officer. It's silly. So at best, this is another Games Workshop mess up, and oops, guess we'll fix this later, as they usually do some weeks down the line, maybe months. So we could be like this till December, then there might be an FAQ. Or at worst, resurgence points are limited to the small 5-man units you were probably already using Cult Ambush on. Okay. Units. All of the FAQs that were in the previous faction pack are still here, except the FAQ that says the Primus, decoys and misdirection cannot be used inside a transport is gone. This matches the rumoured rule that abilities can now be used from inside a transport. We won't know until the rules appendix drops, maybe next week. The Genestealer Cult Magos is the same, and is therefore looking good. Their mind control ability makes an enemy unit -1 to hit in the shooting phase, dice roll dependent. That will stack with the benefit of cover, or the benefit of stealth. That makes the enemy unit -1 ballistic skill. So an enemy that was hitting on 3+ has their ballistic skill reduced to 4+, and then they roll their dice, and it's -1 to all of those die rolls, so effectively they need a 5+. Very good. The Magos also has the ability to undo Battle Shock, which in 11th edition is otherwise persistent until you pass a Battle Shock test in the command phase. We can just undo that. That's good. The Acolyte Icon Ward's ability is changed from 9 inches to 8 inches, but otherwise these 3 core characters are the same as they were before. They are still our main leaders. The Biophagus, the Clamavus, the Locust and the Nexus are no longer leaders, they are support characters. You cannot have them alone. No random Clamavus sitting out in the open with an area of no, you cannot deep strike within 12 inches of me. But you can double up inside a bodyguard unit with them and one of our main leaders. The Magos, the Primus, and the Icon Ward. Also the Benefactus. They remain a leader. So you can now double up with the Benefactus and a Nexus in a unit, and in, say, Host of Ascension, that block could come from reserves. It has lethal hits from the Benefactus, it has sustained hits from the Detachment rule, and the Nexus can reduce stratagems by 1, so you can have critical hits on a 5+ for those lethal hits, and sustained hits for only 1 command point. As a leader, you can also have the Benefactus continue to run around alone. If you want to stick 3 Benefactus in a truck and have them fire their brain laser from the firing deck, I think you've wasted a lot of points. But it still technically works in the rules. I have more problems with the Metamorphs. You take the Broodsurge ability and you change it to, in the enemy shooting phase, when the enemy unit is shot, if a model in this unit was destroyed, this unit can make a surge move of up to D6 inches. It makes no mention of the second paragraph that says at the start of the battle, if no model in this unit has a hand flamer, it can surge 6 inches instead of D6 inches. It's all part of the same Broodsurge ability. For now, I can only assume that part is gone. And thus the interesting, what if I just want to have auto pistols and surge better option isn't there anymore. It doesn't say change the first paragraph, it says change the Broodsurge ability to this. Another mistake, Games Workshop? Or is it now pointless to have Metamorphs with anything other than hand flamers? WYSIWYG isn't that important. They're all hand flamers now. Just assume that. The Kellamorphs Codex Original, if the enemy moves within 12 inches, you can shoot and then move. That was cut down to 9 inches in a previous balance patch, now it's been cut down to 8 inches. By the end of 11th edition, it'll be 4 inches if the trend continues. But this changes to match the distance for ingress. Enemies must be over 8 inches, so the cowboy can't react to that. I also have problems with the Reductor Saboteur. Fine, the planted explosive now affects enemies that step on it within 8 inches rather than 9 inches. But it's primed and readied. It hasn't been changed. In the shooting phase, you can use the grenade stratagem for 0 command points. There is no grenade stratagem in 11th edition. There is explosives, and models with the grenade's keyword can use the explosive stratagem, but there isn't a grenade stratagem. Rules as written, this ability doesn't work. And this is the document that's meant to fix things to make them compatible for 11th edition, and it doesn't work. We know what it's meant to do, it does the same thing as in 10th edition, unless Games Workshop is like, no, Primed and Ready isn't meant to exist, you're not meant to get free grenades. This is frustrating. This should be fun and interesting, but it's frustrating instead. And I'm sorry I'm getting frustrated at some words that haven't been corrected properly, but this was the time to correct the words properly and they haven't done it. The Goliath and the Goliath truck that don't have bases get the frame keyword, which just means you measure from any part of the hull. The Sanctus with the sniper has their rule changed from 9 inches to 8 inches. The Sanctus with the knife, whose ability meant the enemy cannot fire Overwatch at them, now says the enemy cannot snapshoot at them, which is Overwatch, but also there are several other abilities that refer to snapshooting at your unit. They also won't work. And the Tectonic Frag Drill had its rule changed to 8 inches and is match play legal. We don't know what that means exactly, but if an event is match play only, you can take the Terrible Frag Drill. The Fortification keyword means it can't do actions, which is a shame because it would be perfect for that. It can't move or have its movement increased from dash to be able to move. But maybe when the points document comes out, this is like 20 points and it's great and we could just have one. If you're wanting some Genestealer Cult models, in the United States, the Combat Patrol magazine is out and ongoing with the Genestealer Cult issues, I think. Otherwise, you can get models cheaper than going through Games Workshop with my affiliates that are all linked in the description. Do not go through Games Workshop to get your models. At the very least, they don't deserve it. Okay, detachments. Detachment changes, starting with the new ones. The Xenocult masses. In your command phase, neophyte units within terrain can heal 3 wounds. We don't know exactly what the heal rule does, it's not in the core rules, but it sounds like you get 3 models back. Which means you can recover your cult icon, then use the cult icon in the command phase, and you go from 1 model left to 9 models left. Very annoying for the enemy to deal with. One of the enhancements is Devious Disguises. A neophyte hybrid unit has -3 to its detection range, so if it's in area terrain, and it hasn't fired in the previous turn, or this turn, and the enemy is more than 15 inches away, well, it's changed to if the enemy is more than 12 inches away, then they cannot shoot you because you're hidden. This only applies if you're hidden. If you're not hidden, if one person is visible outside of the terrain, none of this matters. Points dependent. I'm hoping it's not many points. And an enhancement for the Magos or the Primus, the unit's attacks can reroll damage rolls. If it's cheap enough, that's good. A unit of 20 neophytes has 6 variable damage weapons. From the neophytes, 2 grenade launchers, 2 mining lasers, 2 seismic cannons. All of those have random damage that you may want to not have as ones. And then you add in the Primus Claw and Pistol, and the Magos Staff. All of these are variable damage. All of those could reroll their damage rolls. Depends on the points of these enhancements. To counter enemy hidden units, we have the Eyes of the Cult stratagem. If there's a neophyte unit within area terrain, enemy units within that same area terrain have +6 detection range. So instead of we can't shoot them outside of 15 inches because they're hidden, now we can't shoot them unless we're outside of 21 inches. Then it should be fine to shoot them. Fanatical Hail is it's pretty good. We used to have this, but then they changed what the Primus's ability does. A neophyte unit shooting in your shooting phase can reroll hit rolls. We're not allowed to combine this detachment with the Host of Ascension, so you can't use any of their stratagems. But if you're in the final day, a Benefactus with the sustained hits enhancement, then you get lethal hits from the Benefactus, sustained hits from the enhancement, and now you have full rerolls to hit to try and get more. That's a pretty good combo. And then the third stratagem, which really confirms to me that the Genestealer Cult were done last minute. Okay, the stratagem itself is fine. In your opponent's shooting phase, they shoot at a neophyte unit, and every model is within area terrain. Their attacks are -1 AP, and that lasts until that unit has attacked. That unit could refer to the neophyte unit. All enemies are -1 AP until we attack, That seems to be what it's saying. The wording is different to Armor of Contempt and any other very similar stratagems. They all say the ranged attacks of the enemy are -1 AP until that enemy unit has finished attacking. This has different wording. Is that another oops mistake? Or is that deliberately different? We can never know. Rules as intended is always our inference. Rules as written, it lasts until the neophyte unit has attacked. They are the target of the stratagem. So we need an errata for our errata. The Heroes of the Uprising has a lot of combos for your characters. Well, the Assassini, the murder characters. Kelemorphs, Locus, Reductus Saboteur, and Sanctus are killers. These models reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1. If a Locus was in a unit of Acolytes, it's only the Locus that gets the rerolls. It's this model, not the unit. There are 2 enhancements, one for the Locus and Sanctus, one for the Kelemorph and Reductus Saboteur. The Gene-Tailored Toxins is very good. +1 damage on their attacks. The Sanctus Sniper is now damage 4. The Sanctus with a knife is damage 3. The Locus is damage 3. So a Sanctus with a dagger hits on a 2+, has anti-infantry 3+ to wound on a 3+, you have full rerolls to hit and wound against your Psychic Spore target, and then we have a stratagem that gives you Devastating Wounds. Devastating Wounds is triggered on any critical wound if you have anti-infantry 3+. 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all critical wounds. So the enemy is easy to hit, easy to wound with the rerolls. There's no armor save, there's no invulnerable save, and you're doing 3 damage per attack that gets through out of our 6 attacks. It has precision, it can go straight on the enemy characters. You will kill way above your points level with this combo. Rapid ingress or infiltrate close, out of line of sight, move out in the open, the enemy cannot fire snapshots at you because you're a cloaked assassin, no snapshots including Overwatch, and then you go to town on super murdering their best character and probably anyone else in their bodyguard. Terminators are dead, Blade Guard are dead, Scorpeth Lord with Scorpeth Destroyer, yeah, all dead. We don't know how the heal thing works for the Necrons, whether they would still just get their character back with reanimation protocol, because characters and bodyguards do not split on death anymore. So maybe it wouldn't work so well against Necrons, because it seems like until we have the full rules, Necrons seem to be effectively immune to precision. The other enhancement, Contraband Munitions. It's for a Kelemorph or a Reductus Saboteur, a Cowboy Man or a Bomb Lady. Their ranged attacks have +2 strength. Strength 8 Liberator Auto Stubs is okay for the Kelemorph, but they're still damage 1. Wounding the enemy was never the problem with the pistol. But the Reductus Saboteur, her demo charge is strength 11. Her remote explosives are strength 7. You don't have to fire them indirectly, fire them directly. Her auto pistol is strength 5. You could use the Devastating Wound stratagem after getting out of a Goliath truck, because if you shoot the same thing the Goliath truck shot, you can re-roll all the wound rolls. Lots of damage 1, a lot of damage 2, you get some 6s, and that can drag down the bigger targets. We've seen living up to the legend already. If your killer kills an enemy character or destroys an enemy unit, Battleshock Genestealer Cult units within 12 of the killer are no longer battleshocked. It may be useful that one time it's suddenly really important that you start an action in the shooting phase. And seeing the Reductus Saboteur blow someone up suddenly inspires the troops to get on with the job. And finally is loyal to the end. You don't use it when one of your killers is killed, you use it when an enemy targets your killer, and you assume that you're going to die. It's in the fight phase only, and you can only use it if you haven't been selected to fight yet, but you roll a dice. On a 1, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 2+, you don't take your model off the board, you still get to select them to fight, they still fight as normal, and then are removed from the board. They still count as one of your selections for picking a unit to fight next. I wouldn't use this on a Reductus Saboteur. The enemy suffering 1 mortal wound only if you roll a 1 is not worth it. You're probably going to roll more, and then you would have to fight normally. It's for a Locus or a Sanctus that has the extra damage upgrade. The final new one, is Purestrain Broodswarm. At the end of the fight phase, friendly unengaged Genestealers can be placed into strategic reserves. They leave the board and they can return later. The detachment has the Purestrain tag and cannot be taken with another Purestrain detachment. Where the tags are on other detachments is gonna probably only come with the list building on the app. But I'm pretty sure that Biosanctic Broodsurge will have the Purestrain keyword. So your Purestrains are doing much more go underground, stay hidden, come back up, do an action. I'm especially thinking squads of 5 Genestealers that infiltrate, that die first, then we use Cult Ambush on them, because we're not using it on anything that had a character. Then they come back, then they can do our actions, they can be in our places, they can score our primary and secondary missions, and if we need them somewhere else, leave the board at the end of the enemy fight phase and turn up again to do an action somewhere else next turn. One of the enhancements is really good for a block of Purestrains that have a Patriarch, probably. Yeah, with a Patriarch, say with a Patriarch. The unit's +1 toughness, their toughness 5, their save goes from 5+ to 4+, their invulnerable save is still 5+, but against AP 0 attacks, now we have a better save, and the melee attacks have +1 strength for strength 5. They have a good hit chance. Now we have good strength. We already had good armor penetration. Lots and lots of damage 1 attacks will upset a lot more enemies. And we're less likely to die in turn. Depends how many points it is, but it's a good one. Talons of the Sire is for the Patriarch, but the unit that they're in can reroll wound rolls of 1. The Patriarch's attacks are already twin linked. They're rerolling all of their wound rolls to try and get those devastating wounds, but now the Purestrains can try and get some devastating wounds. This is like an inbuilt, always on in the lesser form hyper ferocity from Final Day. And of the 3 stratagems, we knew 2 of them already. Lurk and Strike, Purestrains can fall back and charge. We can already advance and charge. This is falling back and charging instead. You cannot advance and fall back in the same turn. It's one or the other kind of movement. But if the enemy charged you with a tank, because your low strength damage 1 attacks would take a while to claw through it, now we can ignore that. Fall back from it and get towards our intended target. They've slowed us a little bit, rather than slowing us for like a whole turn. With Crawling Horror, you can reduce the detection range of the Genestealers by 6. So this again works with the hidden rule. We don't have any guns to shoot, so we should always be available to be hidden, and now the enemy cannot attack us if they're over 9 inches. Regardless of what other things reduce detection range, 9 is the minimum. So we get to go to the absolute limit of detection range with 1 stratagem. Does the enemy want to come close to our army where they can attack the Genestealers but will get hit by everything else? Or do they go, yeah, I'm not going to go close. Now I know I can't just shoot them to death. And finally, Inhuman Reaction. If the enemy ends a move within 8 inches, we can make a normal move of D3+3. That could help to get more of our models in cover, so we can be hidden. Or it could be this weird situation where we have used Crawling Horror already, the enemy has come closer, but they weren't in this gap more than 8 inches but less than 9 inches with all their models. If they come within 8 inches, we could use Inhuman Reactions to move further away, and then Crawling Horror is still in effect. The enemy's more than 9 inches away, so we cannot be shot. Potential shenanigans, but that's costing a lot of command points. And for a 1 detachment point detachment, maybe you just want to use one of the enhancements and the detachment ability, and that'll do. There's no real changes to Host of Ascension, but Host of Ascension, despite being our 3 detachment point detachment, that's going to be all your detachment points at 2,000 points, it's looking good. The detachment rule lets you ignore cover. There's a lot of cover out there, -1 ballistic skill will upset us regardless of what we were shooting at, whereas in 10th edition, if we shot at some Space Marines with their 3+ armor, the benefit of cover did nothing against our autoguns and hand flamers. Now it would upset our autoguns as we would become -1 ballistic skill. We can ignore that. Or we have a lot of hand flamers that don't care about cover and auto hit. Pop up just over 8 inches away from the enemy. That will get around the hidden rule. Oh, also, our ignore cover units now ignore stealth, because stealth is just the benefit of cover. And with the changes to secondary missions that you can keep the cards and score them at any point in the future, as long as you're not scoring more than 15 points in a turn, having a lot of the army in reserves is not wasting our abilities. We're not missing out on victory points from secondaries we weren't going to complete because we didn't have many units on the table. Wait until you have enough units on the table and then go for them. There's no mention in this document that the host of Ascension has the host keyword. It probably should, but if that's a tag, it's not mentioned here, maybe on the app. Assume that for the next 2 weeks, any rules you see are work in progress, or the real rule is somewhere else, in another PDF, in a card deck, in the app somewhere, maybe behind a paywall. It is very frustrating to get the first sentence of a rule in an article revealing the rules and not getting to check if it's real or not. I haven't had much faith in the Games Workshop articles to be accurate. Lance was described as reroll wound rolls instead of the +1 to wound it was later confirmed to be. Scout was supposedly an ability that let you go into reserves after deployment. Well, nope. You come from reserves and go into your deployment zone after deployment. That is very different. Also the Daka rig, which was described as a character. It isn't a character. It can't take enhancements or be the army warlord. It isn't a mech, but is a big mech. Those are different keywords. And it has Daka rig as a keyword, but not big mech Daka rig, its own name. Moving on to Biosanctic Broodsurge. This is the one about the Genestealers that isn't the other one about the Genestealers. This one's the Genestealers with Big Hammer Lady. We love Big Hammer Lady. You can get a shirt of Big Hammer Lady. That's linked in the description. Along with a sticker token set that has Battle Shocked, sticky objectives, a reminder sticker. If you put that next to a unit, they're doing an action. They're doing the thing. I created it so it can be useful for you. In the Biosanctic Broodsurge, it's also mostly been left alone. Like the Biohorror Revelation, that's a terrible stratagem that no one uses. That still affects enemies within 9 inches, it hasn't been changed to 8 inches. Intentional, or no, it doesn't matter, no one cares. Stimulated Biosurge is a stratagem that didn't really work, because you had to declare your charge targets, then roll the dice. In 11th edition, you roll the dice, then enemy units that are within that range can be made charge targets. So the stratagem is changed to give +2 to your charge rolls. This still stacks with the +1 from the detachment rule. That's a big bonus to us. I can roll a 6 on 2d6 combined. For a charge roll, no, I can't do that. It won't work. Charge rolls keep failing, no matter how short I make them. Predatory Instincts has been adapted. Same characters can have it, the Abominant, Biophagus or Patriarch. You still get to infiltrate, but when you use Heroic Intervention, it costs 1 command point fewer. This is because Heroic Intervention now has a 1 command point version and a 2 command point version. And the wording of it for when you can use it is also cleared up a little bit. It used to be that your unit could heroically intervene even if you have already targeted a different unit with Heroic Intervention. So the first use would be somewhere else and 1 command point. This use would be free. But in 10th edition, if you did this Predatory Instincts Heroic Intervention first, you couldn't use Heroic Intervention somewhere else on another unit this phase. The wording's been improved, so you can use Heroic Intervention regardless of other uses of the stratagem this phase, and this use does not prevent any other uses of Heroic Intervention on other units this phase. So it actually works better, and you're not like, oh wait, it's free but on condition that I can't use it somewhere else, or I can use it somewhere else but only if I've used it elsewhere first and then I do this one. This just improves it. Takes some of the headache out of it. In the Brothers Auxilia, their Adaptive Reprisal also now reduces the cost of Heroic Intervention by 1 command point rather than making it free, as it didn't previously have any wording about, oh, if another unit's already heroically intervened, this one still can. So there's no extra wording around that. But what it has done is strip out the ability to affect other units. It used to be that once per turn you can target the friendly Genestealer Cult unit within 9 inches, including yourself, and they can heroically intervene. Being able to affect other units is not there anymore. You cannot summon aid to you. It is when this unit is targeted with Heroic Intervention, that use is 1 command point fewer. That's the only real change, and that's unfortunate for the Brothers Auxilia. A Dark Network should be updated to say, not in the reinforcement step of your opponent's movement phase, because there is no reinforcement step. This should be updated to say, in the enemy movement phase, after an enemy unit makes an ingress move, one of your units within 12 inches can make a normal move of 6 inches. This stratagem doesn't work, there is no reinforcement step. units can be set up at any time during your movement phase. We've got to figure out how to make this stratagem work and assume it is any time in the enemy movement phase. Because there's no reinforcement step, this has not been updated for 11th edition. A terrible stratagem, but one that technically works, is Suppress and Overwhelm. In your shooting phase, an Astra Militarum unit in your army shoots an enemy unit, and that enemy unit cannot fire Overwatch. Overwatch is used in the movement phase. The shooting phase is after the movement phase. You prevented the enemy from using a stratagem they couldn't use anymore. But it has a second benefit, which is if a Genestealer Cult unit charges the enemy unit, you can reroll the charge roll. Okay, we have command reroll for that. Or maybe you could use Suppress and Overwhelm and it'll affect your unit in the charge phase and you can use command reroll elsewhere. That would rely on us knowing that we're gonna need to reroll, that we're gonna fail the first roll and so a reroll is necessary. And you're gonna have to spend a command point to do it. Terrible stratagem, technically works, really needs to be updated. The Brothers Auxilia has long needed an overhaul, but seeing that some of the stratagems don't work properly is even more upsetting. We know it's the neglected child that Games Workshop doesn't care about. Getting a reminder of that is still not pleasant. There's no real changes to the Outlander Claw, but if the appendix clarifies that abilities can be used from inside transports, it makes the detachment much better. If Starfall Shells remains at 10 points, and you can shoot an enemy unit and they are -1 to hit, remember that will stack with -1 ballistic skill. Starfall Shells have not been changed. 10 points is worth it. If you've got a Jackal Alphas available, that's massively inconveniencing an enemy shooting unit. Along Shadowed Trails has had its range changed from 9 inches to 8 inches. Rapid Feint, that you use when an enemy ends a normal move within 9 inches of you, has not been changed. That still lets you make a reactive move when the enemy ends within 9 inches, not 8 inches. But since that cannot be applied to enemy units that arrive from reserves that make an ingress move, I guess it's fine. It's not really changing anything. The enemy's not going to deep strike nearby and then you reactive move, because you cannot use this stratagem in response to the enemy arriving from reserves. In the Xenocreed Congregation, maybe Genesire's Reliquant will be useful for 5 points. But you can't have more than one upgrade or enhancement on a unit. Being able to reroll battle shock tests could be good. Less chance of failing them, more chance of recovering if you failed in the command phase. The Downtrodden Rise stratagem has been updated to say the end of the enemy movement phase, rather than the end of the reinforcement step of the enemy movement phase. It's been updated in a way that Dark Network was not. Path of Anguish has not been updated to say this is a surge move. It has all the same wording as before, but like the Metamorphs could have had the surge keyword added. Hasn't happened. Functionally the rules are the same. But if the enemy has some ability to react or avoid surge moves, this is not officially a surge move, so any such rules would not be triggered. I get the feeling that whoever was doing this update was only given half of a Genestealer Cult codex, so only half of the stratagems have had their wording updated. Frenzied Devotion is unchanged and that's fine, but it is a lot more dangerous to use. Frenzied Devotion gives your attacks hazardous. Hazardous is now failed on a 1 or a 2. You're going to lose twice as many people if you use this stratagem. Just be aware of that for 11th edition. And Tireless Fervor has been updated to work better with the way rolling your dice for the charge move, then picking your charge targets has worked. So you still have the first part, you can advance and charge or fall back and charge, but then you can use the second part of a stratagem. You don't have to. That lets you re-roll the charge, but you must end your charge move engage with an enemy that's engaged with a friendly character unit. So we're rushing in to protect the Primus that's been left all alone. Or the Primus's unit is fighting and you send in another Acolyte unit, advancing and charging and then re-rolling the charge to go and protect the Primus. So if your plan is to charge an enemy unit that's engaged with one of your character units, maybe because you've already charged the character in earlier in the charge phase, then you can use the second part so you have the option to re-roll the charge roll. It's a little bit confusing as to when it happens in the 11th edition steps, but you're using this before you've made the charge roll. You've declared you're going to do a charge, you say if you're using the second part of this stratagem, then you roll a charge, maybe re-rolling it if need be, then you make a charge move, and you would have to end in engagement range of the enemy that's in engagement range of a friendly character unit. And the last detachment, as always, is the final day. There are no details of updates. You have to sort through the pages ourselves. And because this is technically the first version of a document, they don't have any red sections to tell you what's different to previous and what's changed. So, final day. The points for the allies are the same as before. Up to half of your army, so 500 points if you're playing Incursion, 1000 points if you're playing Strike Force. This also mentions onslaught size, which we haven't seen mentioned elsewhere in 11th edition's core rules or articles that Games Workshop has shown off. Another thing that will probably be in the Force Creation rules. This is half your army, but 1500 points is considered Incursion in 11th edition, so only 500 points of Tyranids at that size. We have the same unit options. Gargoyles are not as good of a choice. You cannot ingress move, and then shoot, and then move again, because in 11th edition, you cannot make a move until the charge phase if you arrived from reserves this turn. So they're not as good a choice, but for their speed, you can zoom from your deployment zone to where they're needed, move, shoot, move again. That works. That will get your Genestealer Cult units in Catalyst range. Or for a different tactic, use Psy Surge from Deep Strike. Any Tyranid unit coming from Deep Strike, not just Gargoyles. And that Catalyst now has a range of 9 inches, and within range of the enemy you popped up just over 8 inches from. Genestealer Cult units now have +1 to hit against them. The Psy Surge stratagem hasn't changed, even though it probably should. Divine Imperative has been updated like the Xenocreed stratagem Tireless Fervor. You can only use Divine Imperative if your Genestealer Cult unit is within 12 inches of a Tyranid unit engaged with the enemy. If your unit is on the far side of an enemy unit, you could be in range to pick them as a charge target, but not use this stratagem because the Tyranids are more than 12 inches away. Part 1 is get +1 to charge. That's it. You don't have to use Part 2 to charge into an enemy unit within engagement range of a Tyranid unit. As long as there was an engaged Tyranid unit within 12 inches, you could have a little +1 to the charge roll you were about to roll. If you use Part 2, you can re-roll the charge, but your charge will fail if you don't end within engagement range of an enemy unit already engaged with a Tyranid unit. Same tactic, different wording. Tyranid unit charges, Genestealer Cult unit that came from Deep Strike uses the stratagem to be more likely to get to charge. The enhancements are written the same, with the same wording to Enraptured Damnation. It's not, you cannot be shot by snapshots, it remains that the enemy cannot fire Overwatch at your unit. Okay. So ends the Genestealer Cult Faction Pack. An updated rule set that feels like 2 people were assigned half the rules each to update, and one of them never turned up for work. Remember, this is a pre-day 1 rules fix. It only starts being valid from the 20th. We will also maybe see a day 1 errata, and a week 1 errata, and an end of September errata, and an end of October errata, and then an end of December errata, and in one of these, eventually, the Genestealer Cult rules will work with 11th edition. Maybe not all of them, but more of them. With the Death Watch, I was happy the faction exists, at least for now. We don't know what'll happen when the Space Marine Codex comes out in September. The Genestealer Cult Faction Pack has not filled me with faith that Games Workshop can adapt the faction rules into 11th edition. So I look to the release of the Adeptus Sororitas and Imperial Agents Faction Pack with great concern. How has your faction pack been? Can you have a great day of 40k?